Did you know that 88% of Americans are financially stressed over the high cost of living here in the United States? And not only that, experts say things are going to get worse. According to reports, the American people could see the highest and the largest tax hike in U.S. history very soon. This is going to cripple the U.S. economy and it's going to hurt millions and millions of Americans. I'm going to explain what's going on and what lawmakers are currently attempting to do about this. But in the meantime, there could be some pain. So I'm going to break all this down in just a moment. But all I ask is one thing. It takes 2 seconds. Go ahead, hit that like button if you enjoy these daily updates. And now let's begin. So it's crazy to think that millions and millions of Americans are about to be pushed through another painful event. And that's going to be an increase, the largest tax hike in U.S. history. But at the same time, look at stories like this, where it says most Americans can't afford a $1,000 emergency expense. Most Americans, 59% of Americans cannot afford a $1,000 emergency expense. Neither do they have that in savings or they have that available to use on a credit card. That's troubling. But this is where things are actually going to get even worse. The American people could see their paychecks shrink. Not because their wages are going down. We're actually seeing wages go up, which is great. The problem is we're about to see taxes increase. Look at this. It says attention must be paid. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is set to expire at the end of 2025. We need to do something about this because this is providing millions of people, and not just the wealthy. This is providing lower income and middle income households additional resources, additional money that they can use and spend every single week or every single month. This is also increasing the child tax credit. And I want to show you some things, but before I do that, I want to play this clip. Listen to this, okay? This is what we have to deal with.
If we do not get this tax bill done, as I said in my Senate hearings, this is pass-fail for our side of the aisle, and we will have the largest tax hike in history, and that will be on the people on our side who do not try to move this forward.
So there you go. This could be the largest tax hike in history. You're probably wondering, well, how? How is this such a big deal? Well, first, I want to show you one of the facts. This is what was done years ago, okay? This was passed in 2017. It says to claim this bill is only a tax cut for the wealthy. The fact of the matter is the bill cuts taxes and lowers the tax rates for all Americans. While the status quo tilts in favor of the wealthy because the taxes for businesses, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act delivers tax relief for middle-income Americans by doubling the standard deduction and lowering rates for those who need it most. It says the typical American household will receive a tax cut of $2,059, meaning more hardworking Americans will keep more of their paycheck. But I want to show you this. Again, this is the facts, okay? This is the prior law over here. You can see that I'll just show you the tax rates, okay? 10%. Okay, this is the exact same, okay, across the board. This is the exact same, except for it's a 15% tax rate for anyone that makes, for let's say a married couple that makes between $19,050 and $77,400. That's a 15% tax rate. Well, the new one on the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is 12%. But this is where things get very interesting, okay? So let's say you make $77,400 or anywhere between $156,150. Before you had a 25% tax rate. Now it's 22. But not only that, it's a $77,400 between that and $165,000. Then it goes up to $315 as opposed to $237. 28% before, 24% now. The highest tax rate used to be 39.6%. Now it is 37%. And that is before, if you made over $480,000, now if you make over $600,000. Again, it's a huge difference. The amount of money that the American people are able to save because they're not putting it back into taxes is huge. And keep in mind, what are we fighting for right now? What is one of the things that President Trump has been fighting for? To lower the costs from the federal government. If we can lower the cost of all the services, all the programs, the agencies that we are currently trying to run, we can lower those costs. We can actually lower taxes. We can pay off our national deficit. Maybe not pay it off, but start to chunk away at it. We could do those things. And in the end, it could really benefit the American people. But here's the thing. If this doesn't go through, what do? This is why some believe that we are going to see more pain. Look at this one. It says Republicans stare down massive deficits to extend Trump tax cuts. I want to read a little bit of this article to you because this is exactly what we've been fighting for. This is what we've been fighting about, is how do we get rid of all these additional debts? How do we lower our national deficit, our yearly deficit? How do we do that? Well, look at this. It says, caught between the debt and their tax base, Republicans are considering some novel ways to account for the cost of their legislative agenda as disagreements over budget cuts look set to hamstring early moves on their tax bill. It says, known as working from the current policy baseline, the non-standard accounting method would let Republicans sweep nearly $5 trillion of debt under the rug. Okay. Now, I'm going to keep reading a little bit more of this in just a second. But think about this. How do you get rid of $5 trillion? Okay, how do you clean that up? It's going to be difficult. Okay, look at this. It says using that baseline would keep the cost of extending expiring provisions of the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act out of the bill's budgetary score, but include the potential benefits of renewing those provisions. Doing so would likely produce a much smaller number by which the tax legislation would add to the deficit. Yeah, it could, but at the same time, keep in mind that there are different plans. The plans that the Trump administration has will work if everything goes through. If we start to see Democrats are holding them back, some Republicans say, no, let's not do this at this time. I want to push my agenda through. If we start to see things like that, it's going to be rough times. It's going to be pain for the American people over the next probably year or two. Now, I want to show you one other thing. Okay? We are about to see the largest tax hike in U.S. history if this doesn't go through. Think about that for a second. Think about if you had to pay an additional $1,000 to the federal government for taxes, okay, for tax purposes. What is that going to do to you? If every single year you're getting money back from the federal government, from the IRS, what's going to happen if maybe this next year you don't see a $3,000 check in the mail? You don't see a $3,000 direct deposit hit your bank account. And instead it's $1,000. Maybe it's less than that because not only are we going to have to pay more in taxes, but you have a lower child tax credit. Maybe you have 2 kids. Currently, if you have 2 kids, you're probably going to get $4,000, $2,000 per child. Well, next year, it would actually be $1,000 per child. It'd go back to what it was previously in 2017. So again, keep this in mind. Now, I want to show you something else. It says, while on the campaign trail, Trump floated 3 additional ideas for specific changes to the tax code. They're eliminating income taxes on tips, not taxing overtime pay on wage earners, and eliminating all taxes on Social Security benefits. It says, given the election result, my guess is that the president and Congress will focus more on the big picture, with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act at the center of attention rather than tinkering around the edges. The following is a discussion of some of the major provisions of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that are set to expire and how it will impact most Americans if they do. The standard deduction, okay, that's a big one. And also, if the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act expire, the standard deduction will fall to $16,700 in 2026 for married couples and $8,350 for single filers. Okay, what it is now, okay, it says under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the standard deduction for 2026 will be $30,800. Do you see how big of a difference that and this is? That's a $14,150 difference. For single filers, it will be $8,350 as opposed to $15,400. That right there is a big one. Okay? Your individual tax rates, that's going to change as well. So keep in mind that we are about to see the largest tax hike in U.S. history if Congress doesn't get it together and extend this bill. So we'll see what happens moving forward. All I can tell you right now is I'm hoping this does get extended. Not only is this going to put more money back into businesses, which then they can use for research, development, for expansion, for growth, but it's also going to help the American people. So we'll see what happens moving forward, but that is what we know as of today. So again, thank you guys for watching. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the next one.